Karen crossed the front lobby doors of Higashi Pharmaceutical at 6:40 in the morning. The only thing different about this Tuesday was that Ken, the head of security, was waiting for her, which meant something was wrong before he said a single word. "You're early," she said. "Come with me. You need to see something." Ken escorted her to the main security back office. She noticed that Ken didn't smile the way he usually did, the small private smile he saved for her and pretend it wasn't there for the cameras. 6 years in the role, 6 years of being the steady, watchful presence at the edge of every room she walked into. The outbreak was hitting the United States. It was following the immunization pattern. The regions that received the vaccine first were the same regions now reporting the dead getting back up. If the pattern held, Arizona was next. "We need to get you to your safe house, Karen," Ken told her. "I'm almost there with the cure," she said. "Just need a little more time. I can fix this." That was the thing about Karen that the board seemed sometimes resented, and that Karen loved without permission to say out loud. She didn't spend long in shock. She moved through it fast and came out the other side already working. As she walked out his office, a woman came in the front lobby door, breathing heavy, making sure the door closed fully behind her. Karen stopped to look at the woman in the lobby and the mass of bodies running toward the building, her eyes growing wide. The infected crashed through the doors. Ken shouted into his earpiece, ordering the lobby be locked, and rushed Karen toward the escalator. Behind them, the security gates came down over the lobby entrance, only to begin buckling almost immediately under the weight of the infected outside. Karen was running up the escalator before Ken could follow her. At the top on the second floor, she stopped and waited for him, hands held out to him. As they ran down the hallway, people came out of offices to see all the commotion. Second floor security met Ken and Karen by the stairwell. There wasn't time to do more than say they were going to the roof when zombies came up the escalator. As they climbed, the security team formed a wall between them and the undead. Employees who weren't fast enough were taken down by the infected. Gunfire erupted, and for a little while, the team held their ground. A titanic steel crash coming from the lobby was followed by the sound of a larger horde coming up the escalator. Suzuki pulled a few grenades from his vest, pulled the pins, and rolled them down the hall, shouting for everyone to get up the stairs. The explosion caused everyone to lose their balance on the stairs. At the top, the group stopped when the sound of footsteps came down from above. 3 infected came running down. Karen gasped in dismay. She recognized 2 of them from her staff. Ken pulled her through the third-floor door, security following close behind, slamming the stairwell door behind them. Third floor was a madhouse. Employees fought their lives in their offices against their own teammates, recently turned undead. Security went to help, but Ken called them back, saying, "You can't save them. We need to get Miss Higashi to the roof." Past desks turned into mini battle arenas they ran. Anything that got too close to them and didn't look human was shot. At the end of the hallway, the door to the next section was blocked by employees thrashing on the ground. Zombies in mid-turn. Ken and his men pulled open the elevator doors, and the shaft was empty. There was no other choice. Yamato went in first, found purchase on a ladder, and began climbing up the elevator shaft. Ken went in next, moved down a few rungs, telling Karen to go up ahead of him. Suzuki brought up the rear. On the 4th floor, they forced the elevator doors open and barely missed being grabbed by 2 zombies who went tumbling head over feet down the shaft. The team was barely out of the elevator shaft when zombies broke through an office door. Hardly enough time to get off a few shots before they had to retreat into a woman's bathroom. Ken's voice on the radio was flat and controlled. ordering his team to converge on the restroom while something on the other side of the door began testing it, slow, methodical blows. "Sir," Yamato said, "the halls on 4 are overrun, but I have a plan." "We're all ears," Ken said. "The other side of this wall should be server racks and workstations, sir. Not many people work there. I think I can blow a hole in the wall and get us through." "I hope you're right, but we don't have much of a choice." Ken pulled Karen into a stall, closed the door, and covered her as best as he could with his own body. When Yamato was ready, he gave the word. The sound was almost deafening, but the shattered wall fragments bounced harmless off the stall doors. Ken pulled Karen through the new gap as the restroom door buckled behind them. Yamato and Suzuki threw themselves into the gap, and again they pushed the infected back. Past server racks and empty workstations they went, until they found a door leading into another stairwell. The 5th floor housed a secure biochemical repository. There they found some of Karen's staff and the rest of Ken's security detail waiting. Ken asked Karen to wait a moment, then walked off with the team. They reported that some of the people had turned, but they'd been locked in secure rooms before anyone else got hurt. Behind him, Karen spoke, asking what their next step was. The roof. There was a helipad, the company chopper, fueled and waiting, part of the executive contingency plan her father had built for emergency and never once needed. They needed it now. Karen started to object. What about her staff? "Whoever's left," Ken said, "will bring with us as far as the roof access point allows. I'm not promising them anything, but I'm promising you that I will get you to the roof." She looked at him, and for one suspended second, all the careful distance of 6 years sat plainly in the room between them. "Then let's go get my people," she said. With 7 staff in tow, 2 security in front, 2 in back, Ken and Karen in the middle, they moved quickly through the 5th floor to the secure entrance to 6. There they stopped to tell everyone to be quiet. Ken and his men gathered to discuss what waited on the other side, the genomics and DNA sequencing division. Karen pulled 2 of the staff aside. These people had no clearance to this floor. These people had no idea what had been going on in there. She started explaining to them that the only way to fight this outbreak was to see it for themselves. But before she could go further, Ken cut her off. "We have to go, Karen. There isn't much time left." With everyone together, Ken laid out the rule. Move silently. No talking, no noise. Do nothing but follow the team. When the door unlocked with Ken's passcode, the sound it made put him on edge immediately. The front security desk sat empty, and there was no sign of anyone. 2 at a time, they moved through. Security first, then Ken and Karen, then staff, then the final 2 security. Before the first corner, the lead men stopped the group and looked back, putting up 2 fingers, telling all to go quiet. 6 floor-to-ceiling glass tanks stood in the hall, 3 on each side. The 2 front men went in first, moving past the first row. Ken held everyone back, watching for any response from the tanks. A few seconds passed before he waved the group on. One step at a time, they started down the Hall of Horrors. The staff, who'd never been inside this division, stared at the tanks as they passed. There were people suspended in liquid, not quite human anymore, caught in some delayed stage of becoming something else. One young researcher got so transfixed he walked straight into the woman ahead of him. Everyone froze, looking at the careless man. And that's when the tanks burst. Ken had his gun up and was already firing. Put down one of the creatures first, bullet to its head, then added a second when it wouldn't stay down. Another fell into Karen, but Ken threw it back into the tank and put 2 rounds into its skull. Up ahead, his men were emptying bullets into the undead, but the things weren't dropping. He shouted for everyone, aim for the head. That's the only thing that's going to work. Behind him, more chaos. Karen's staff and the last 2 security men tangled hand to hand, unable to get their weapons up. Ken kept swinging his attention front to back, keeping Karen behind him the whole time. He dropped another infected with 2 shots himself before the final 3 were finally put down, but not without cost. Up front, both security men had been bitten. And without a word, one man shot his partner in the head mid-protest, then turned the gun on himself. Behind them, 5 of Karen's staff had been badly injured. The 2 remaining security men were untouched. They looked to Ken for direction. When he gave the smallest nod, the men raised their weapons at the injured, who begged for mercy. "No," Karen yelled. She stepped forward and pleaded their case. They didn't know if the injured were really infected. She turned and walked straight up to Ken, looking deep into his eyes, and told him again, they didn't know. Ken looked at her, then at the injured, then at his men. 2 of the staff had been bitten. He shook his head, and just like that, those 2 were both shot in the head. Karen watched in horror and stepped back, staring at 2 people she once known, now dead on the floor. She turned to Ken and raised her hand to strike him, but couldn't. Ken didn't flinch. "We can't save them," he said. "I'm not even sure we can save ourselves." Karen kept staring until a distant sounds brought her back. Ken pulled her along, calling for Suzuki to take point. They gathered survivors as they went, a process less heroic than it sounds and more like grim arithmetic. 3 accountants who barricaded themselves into a supply closet with a filing cabinet, shaking, alive, and recruitable. A junior researcher named Emmy, who'd watched her supervisor turn in real time and now wore that particular blank, over-corrected calm of someone whose mind had filed the information somewhere it couldn't reach yet. The roof access was a heavy fire door going to the penthouse and then up to the helipad roof. Ken spoke into his earpiece, asking if anyone was left in security that could confirm the penthouse was clear. The answer came back a moment later, just as the noise of screaming and running feet below them began to grow. The penthouse was clear, the helicopter waiting. Ken turned to Karen. "What happens? You get to that helicopter," he said. "That's the only job left for either of us." And then he opened the door. They moved slowly, closing behind them a door Ken already knew wasn't going to hold. The penthouse was empty, and the stairs to the roof of Higashi Pharmaceutical was clear. The helicopter sat across an open concrete, rotors already spinning up, because the pilot, a company contractor named Aoki, who had the good sense to start the engine the moment she heard what was happening below, had no intention of waiting 1 second longer than necessary. Ken shouted for everyone to move, following Karen toward the helicopter. Hayashi, one of the accountants, turned around and looked down to the penthouse patio in time to watch figures breaking through the glass doors. Yamato turned back, blocking the only stair to the helipad as the zombies came up to him and he began to fire. Karen didn't look back. Ken had told her not to. The helipad side door was already sliding open. Aoki leaning out, shouting something lost under the engine noise and the screaming, both kinds, animal and otherwise, that filled the roof. Ken reached the helicopter, and Ken's hands was on her arm, lifting, propelling her up and through and into the cabin in one motion. And she turned back already and reached for him. Karen didn't look back. Ken had told her not to. The helicopter side door was already slid open. Aoki leaning out, shouting something lost under the engine noise and the screaming, both kinds, human and otherwise, that filled the roof. Karen reached the helicopter, and Ken's hand was on her arm, lifting, propelling her up and through and into the cabin in one motion. Ken, she said, turning around. Count the seats, Karen. His voice was steady, the steadiest she ever heard it. You've only got room enough for one more. We've got more important people who deserve that seat. Hurry. Make your choice. No, Karen said. I'm not finishing that sentence with a question, Karen. I'm telling you a fact. He stepped back from the door, deliberately, putting distance between himself and the helicopter's open threshold, putting himself between the aircraft and the spreading mass of movement closing in from every side of the roof. I need you to look at the people in front of you and tell me who flies. She looked. Karen, choose. We don't have the time you want to take. She held his eyes for one more second. Then she stepped out of the cabin, reached out, grabbed 2 fistfuls of Ken's jacket, and hauled him off balance and into the cabin with strength she didn't know she had until the moment she needed it. She slammed the door shut behind them. She didn't let go. Her hands slid down to find his, gripping them hard enough to hurt. And she held his gaze the way she wanted to, and never once allowed herself in 6 careful years.